And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore. We never sit out. We are your hosts and the NCD today. We got another recap. This time, week 8. All right, another number one team falls. No more undefeated teams in the SEC. Still got some undefeated teams in other places, namely the Big 12, the Big 10. But yeah, this was a good week of football. Once again, maybe not as crazy of a slate, as we had the weekend before with all those overtime games, but I think we learned a lot about a lot of football teams this week. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to recap games we previewed, recap our dirty dogs, because once again, we are money with the dirty dogs. And our best bets, maybe not the greatest week for the Redshirt Sophomore in terms of best bets. Couple bad beats, but man, you hate to see it. But here you are, CD. Anything? What's going on? Anything in particular before we get into these games?
No, it was awesome. I mean, we did have our first head coach firing, right? East Carolina.
Yeah.
Coach is out of there. Defensive coordinator is going to be interim there. So we'll see. Obviously, they were a team. We highlighted them in terms of their schedule in the offseason was super, super easy and how important it was to get off to a fast start after a disappointing season last year. And yeah, it just kind of got rolled yesterday. I mean, they ran into an absolute wagon, right? So we'll see, though. I mean, obviously, the American is worth noting because you got Army, Navy, Memphis, right, playing better right yesterday. So it's pretty interesting there at the top half. There, obviously, East Carolina not really competing for a conference title, trying to make the bowl games salvage the season with the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, in an era where the American Conference, where you have schools like Army and Navy at the top of the conference, there's no excuse to be successful in that conference now with the amount of teams that have left to go to power conferences. You have a great geography. Uh, you're looking at other teams across the country that have hired head coaches that are succeeding right away. And Mike Houston's had 7 years there, 5, 6 years there. So yeah, just no excuse to be going 2-10 and then 3-4 with that kind of schedule. Just no excuse. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. The thing is, though, it's like East Carolina. I don't think they're competing with anyone in terms of hiring people. I guess I always think about like coach firings. It's like, when is the right time to fire a coach? And I think, if you don't believe he's the right guy, I think it's good to get him out of there as soon as possible. But firing him now is interesting because I don't think they're competing with anyone. Like right now, like in terms of like who their coaches are.
I think more of it's about like if you feel that your defensive coordinator, right, is potentially like a candidate for the actual head coaching job. That could be like Blake Harrell, right? That could be a potential spot where like, okay, well, I'll see what he does, see how he handles this interim job, and it's more like an extended job interview instead of because yeah, you're right. It's like, what advantage does it bring to you? Are you going to win more games? How's your recruiting going to affect? I don't really know. So it's definitely interesting to see this early. October would not have been where I'd set the over under at. It would definitely have been in November once we had gotten there. But yeah, it's sucked for Mike Houston. Hopefully East Carolina and the Pirates can, salvage the season and make a bowl game and make a run, build some momentum for next year.
Definitely. A lot of work there to be done in East Carolina for the Pirates. But let's get into some of these games. Again, before we talk about, our dirty dogs, our best bets, and the games that we previewed, leading up to this week, let's talk about some games that maybe we didn't highlight that maybe had interesting results that maybe taught us some things about some other teams. Well, I guess do we want to talk about Missouri Auburn? What a disgusting game that was.
I mean, not really, bro. The SEC right now, not a ton of impressive teams. I'll be honest.
No,
I think
really
a lot.
Not.
The middle of the SEC, which normally is super competitive, and that separates the SEC and makes them one of the best conferences every single season, if not the best. It's that middle, and right now, a lot of ugly football being played from the fourth team, the fifth team, and below. Right, so you got obviously Texas, Georgia, LSU right now, A&M playing well. Everybody else is just disappointing results, struggling on either side of the football. And yeah, this game was gross. Auburn, again, again should have won this football game. How many times are we going to blow leads? How many times are we going to do this, and continue to lose football games in the SEC? They moved to 0-4, 2-5 on the season, making a bowl game with all of a sudden Vanderbilt on that schedule right now. Obviously, you get that game at home, but it's kind of crazy. It is kind of crazy right now. And by the way, ULM is no slouch. We know in late November, these G5 teams coming to Jordan Hare. We know what happens. But yeah, it's brutal. Auburn is in serious risk of missing a bowl game right now, obviously. And for Missouri, it was great to see Brady Cook return back. I mean, you saw what happened when he went out. I know people were talking about him potentially not being a guy this year and struggling, but we saw what happened to the offense when he got out and when he came back in, what kind of boost it gave to them. Excited for Missouri. I mean, they're somehow 6-1 and probably the least impressive 6-1 team in college football right now. And they get Bama this week, who's also not been impressive as well. It's just going to be weird to see how the middle of the SEC shakes out.
Duke's also 6-1, so there are more unimpressive 6-1 teams out there. But in terms of the SEC, like conference championship odds to win it, right? You still have Texas at plus 200, which I don't know if I agree with that. Georgia at plus 220 feels like kind of the right team to put there in that top spot. LSU at plus 450, Texas A&M at plus 500, and then beyond that, you got Tennessee plus 1,000, Ole Miss plus 3,500. Alabama is plus 5,000 to win the SEC right now after dropping 2 games so far in conference, even holding the tiebreaker over Georgia. It's a very interesting time to be in the SEC because you're looking at a team like LSU and A&M, where LSU, I mean, that lost earlier to USC. Like, are we sure that LSU is a great football team? Because I don't know that. Are we sure that Texas A&M is a great football team right now? They're playing really well, and I think they've found an identity. But do we know that they're a great football team right now? It is an interesting year to be in the SEC. Feels like it's kind of wide open, but it also at the same time feels a little bit like, Georgia might be running away with this thing. Just starting to figure out how talented they are, and that defense, specifically that defensive line, and we'll talk about it later. Just absolutely wreaked havoc. But yeah, I mean, I confirmed that Auburn's terrible, and also kind of confirmed that maybe Missouri's not a great football team, but Missouri's schedule still. I mean, look, they made a bowl game. Their schedule is still going to allow them to win a couple more games, potentially make a really good bowl game, and I will probably be fading Missouri in that bowl game. So we'll see. Yeah. Any other game you want to talk about? I mean, we got a lot of them to talk about.
I guess we'll highlight another disappointing team struggling to find an identity right now. USC going over to Maryland, College Park, and they lost. They blew another lead, another second half lead blown by USC. And yeah, man, tough. Really, really tough. Billy Edwards fought their way back. Obviously, Roman Hempe, did some nice things at certain times. They have a really nice 1-2 punch there. No surprise at all, but 1-2 punch there with Prother and Felton, and Smith did some good things for Maryland as well. Yeah, I mean, Maryland's a team, I consider them dead in the water. I took USC in this game, and I felt feeling good for a while. And obviously, I know USC is battling injuries, but it's still inexcusable. Another one inexcusable, and you're seeing the toll of traveling to Michigan and then to Minnesota and then across the country to Maryland. I mean, luckily that was their last cross country trip, if you put it that way, because their only road games are in the Pacific time zone with Washington and UCLA. But man, oh man, oh man, what happened? How far have they fallen, man, for USC to start the way they did, to have that momentum win against LSU, and now a couple of tough losses in the Big Ten.
Well, I mean, you mentioned travel. Teams have struggled, traveling across the country and getting wins. But a team traveled across the country and pulled out a win in the fourth quarter was NC State.
Yeah.
NC State pulled out a win. And I would also, was UCLA also on the road?
UCLA at Rutgers, and they kind of jumped on them early too. And we know that Rutgers team is not built to play from behind, even though they did score some late touchdowns to kind of cut into that lead. But yeah, man, I mean,
get out to an early lead on Rutgers. That's the goal. And then with Cal, I mean, it's the opposite. I mean, just another fourth quarter blown lead, double-digit blown lead for the Golden Bears. Or sorry, are they the Golden Bears? The Bears? I don't know. I forget. Sorry, Cal fans. But the point is, Jay Knott went out, and look, Thomas has been really good at running back there, but not being able to move the chains and consistently run the ball well in the fourth quarter. I don't know what's happening in these fourth quarters for Cal, where they just keep finding a way to lose football games. They're a 3-4 football team. The Florida State game, right? They should have also won that game in the fourth quarter. I don't think they didn't blow a lead in that game per se, but they did miss a field goal, and then had an opportunity to score at the end of the game. Just this is a team that is 3-4 that could very well be 5-2,
Yeah.
6-1 even. It's tough right now. It's tough.
Well, the margins are thin in college football, and nobody knows that better than the Big 12, man. I want to highlight a couple results here that kind of caught my eye here. We'll start at the nightcap here. TCU beating Utah, man. Utah continues to struggle, continues to absolutely struggle. TCU's defense and Andy Avalos, I know they're playing against, a shell of an offense over there in Utah, but they did their thing. They stopped the run well, which is what you have to do against Micah Bernard and this Utah offense. How about Baylor? Boom, boom, boom. Texas Tech is undefeated in the Big 12. No more. Baylor gets their first conference win this week. Sawyer Robertson put up dummy numbers, and they continue to listen. Baylor's playing solid football. I think at times, I think we've seen them struggle at times, but they're giving people a lot of fits in the Big 12. And if Baylor continues to have that buy-in, I see no reason why they couldn't potentially make a bowl game, especially with their schedule down the stretch. And then Colorado put a beating, an absolute hurting on Arizona after jumping out to a big lead in that first half. They continue to look good. They continue to look good and stack wins. It is interesting to see with their schedule. They're still, by the way, 3-1 with a couple of games against some teams ahead of them, right, in the conference standings that they could potentially climb their way into a serious Big 12 contender, in November, which is crazy, kind of crazy.
Yeah, and the Big 12 Big 12, a lot of teams look vulnerable in that one. I mean, Texas Tech gets killed by Baylor. You have Iowa State. Probably should have lost to UCF in that game. A team that, a lot of people in the comment section were kind of getting on me for maybe not being super impressed with the eyeball test there. But, yeah, very interesting results there. I don't have much to say about Iowa State in the UCF game. I didn't really watch a ton of that football game, so I will have to go back and watch that game. But I do want to talk about Mississippi State. I want to talk about Michael Van Buren, actually, the true freshman quarterback. I thought that when Blake Shapen went down, I thought that it might be, I guess a couple weeks ago, I thought it was going to be Chris Parsons that comes in there. He was a younger quarterback, super athletic, did not play well in any of his time in the previous football season, but I just thought he might be more ready than Michael Van Buren, the true freshman. But Van Buren has been awesome, man. It's been awesome. And Jeff Lebby has made it really nice and easy on him to put up points in an effective game. He scored more points against Georgia than anyone else besides Alabama has this season. Put up more points on Texas A&M than anyone else has this season. Jeff Lebby, I think it's starting to look like, I know that the results aren't there yet. They're 1-6 because, they just don't have the talent in the front seven at all or in the trenches to really compete at the higher level in the SEC and such. But, man, I'm really impressed with Jeff Lebby. And I think Oklahoma, you can see it, is hurting a lot. Seth Littrell is not getting it done there. Jeff Lebby is looking really good. I'm excited for Mississippi State in the future. I really am with Jeff Lebby. So I think people are going to look at this and be like, oh, my gosh, what? I think there's a lot of optimism to be taken out of this. As long as you can retain, and I know that sounds crazy, but in 2024, you have to talk about retaining your talent. As long as you can retain Michael Van Buren on that team, some of those core offensive pieces, I think the future doesn't look too bad for Mississippi State in the SEC, where you could maybe be making some bowl games here and there for the next couple seasons. So I was pretty impressed once again with Michael Van Buren. He's been playing really, really good football, especially for a true freshman. Dare I say, probably playing better football than any other true freshman quarterback in the country. Dylan Raiola was kind of laid a stinker, and we'll talk about that one. But I think Michael Van Buren is playing the best football of any true freshman quarterback right now in the country. Is that crazy?
That's not crazy. He really impressed me. He gave Texas A&M all they could handle, man. I know that score ended up being a 10-point game, but I'm sure, as you know, it was not easy. They did not make it easy on them. Credit to Mississippi State. and Levy for buying in and continuing to fight, even though there's a big uphill battle and talent gaps in some of these football games and with the scoreboard in some of these SEC football games. I want to head over to the Big Ten here and kind of got swept under the rug here. Iowa lost on the road to Michigan State, and there's Jonathan Smith and his team 4-3 right now, 2-2 in conference, having some nice wins under their belt. Right, it's been right. Other than Ohio State and Oregon, they have not looked outclassed against anybody. Now I know you say, okay, it's Boston College and Maryland and Iowa. I get that, but listen, I think it's a big turnaround from what it was a year ago. Obviously, Aiden Childs is doing his thing there, and when he's up, he's awesome, right? And that's what Michigan State's kind of relying upon there. And Iowa, outside of one run with Caleb Johnson, they just didn't get going, and they really struggled. Obviously, offensively, if that can't happen, especially in that first half, and like we talked about Rutgers, we talked about some other Big Ten teams, and just teams in general in college football. If you get up on them, and you make them one-dimensional, or you take away what their best aspect is, and maybe the running game, it's a real uphill battle for Iowa to come back in that football game. So credit Jonathan Smith, credit Michigan State. They're 4-3. They have a real path to a bowl game here. I think a real path to a bowl game. Obviously, Indiana and Illinois are pretty legit teams on their schedule right now, potentially. But goddamn, man, that would be awesome. A big step up for Jonathan Smith, I think.
I agree. I've been super impressed. And, Aiden Childs, another young quarterback. College football. With Iowa, I mean, I really thought Caleb Johnson was going to run a little bit of that defense. And he did a little bit, but I thought it was going to be more. I thought Iowa was going to win that game handily. I didn't even think about that game. It wasn't even like until I saw the final score there, I was like, whoa. I mean, that was probably a game that I should have been watching up until this point.
You did want to watch that game. That game
okay.
was so ugly, bro.
All right, well, perfect. Glad I did not watch it then. Maybe I'll have to watch it back later on. But I want to go to the Sun Belt, dude. And when you're looking at, the odds-on favorites to win the Sun Belt right now, would you have thought that it'd be Louisiana and Georgia Southern at this point, after Week 8, that are the two odds-on favorites to win the Sun Belt? After a Texas State loss to Old Dominion at home, little dirty dog there, on the road, and then James Madison losing to Georgia Southern. Just two big-time results there in the Sun Belt that have huge implications right now. And this thing's kind of wide open. Louisiana, another good win for them. I believe they had that game on the road against Coastal Carolina.
Yep, the blue turf there over in Carolina. Yeah, I was super impressed. I watched a good bit of that game, and damn, man, every time Carolina, you felt like they were getting some momentum, and Louisiana just responded, especially in that fourth quarter. You saw them kind of pull away from it. And listen, outside of Tulane, which they really competed in that football game, and Tulane is doing good stuff in the American there. They've been awesome this year. They have been awesome. They can win in multiple different ways. They're really competitive right now. And obviously, they've got Texas State and ULM, which is crazy to say, still on their schedule, but a lot of winnable football games. I know it's the Sun Belt. I know anything can happen, but it looks like a collision course right now between Georgia Southern and Louisiana. Like you said, who would have thought that going into the season? I think a lot of things, too, like there was a ton of coaching turnover, right? Especially at potentially the top end. We're talking about Troy, right? Not Texas State, at JMU, right? You saw Team South Alabama. You saw a bunch of teams kind of turn over, and now you get these coaches who have been there, established, and trying to build up to the season, and they really hit the ground running and taking advantage of potentially some of the slow starts these coaches are having at their new places.
Louisiana Monroe gets Texas State and Louisiana at home later in the season. They are plus 2,200 to win the Sun Belt. Taking it.
By the way, UL Monroe and ULL Louisiana Raging Cajuns. That's rivalry weekend. That's gonna be awesome. You best believe we feel pretty good about potentially previewing that football game,
which would never have thought that. Literally, like if there's one team that I thought I would have never previewed on this show heading the season, I would have been Louisiana Monroe would have been. I took their under 2.5 wins on the season. And I ate up the juice that came with it, too. Like, that is wild that they're playing. And they had a bye week this week, so they didn't play.
That's why we play the games, though. That's why we play the games.
That's why you play the games. So I guess that's the Sun Belt for you. I guess. Do we want to talk about Utah?
Yeah, I brought them up a little bit, man.
Oh yeah. But
I don't
actually,
know.
let me head a different direction. Let me stay in the West Coast. Let me talk about UNLV and Oregon
Yep.
State. UNLV, Haj Malik Williams. They're undefeated with him at quarterback. He looks really good. And when I'm looking at teams that can compete with Boise State in that Mountain West, if you were to tell me today to pick one of those two teams, I might be taking UNLV over Boise State. I think people could think I'm crazy, but I think UNLV is a very well balanced team, and they do a lot of things well. And I think Boise State's also a good football team. I think their defense has a ton of question marks, and they're just lucky that they're able to like kind of generate explosive plays with Ashton Genty all the time. And, that opens up the play action game with that Maddox and Austin Bolton and co there with Boise State. But I think UNLV is a really good football team, man. Really good football team. And I don't think Oregon State's. I know Oregon State's fourth. I don't think Oregon State's a bad football team either. I think that's a good game. You're gonna go on the road to Corvallis and pick up, an 8-point win against Oregon State, UNLV. That's a good win right there. They're 6-1. Their playoff hopes are still certainly alive. I know they lost to Syracuse, but I still think that Liberty hasn't got yet. I think they will. They get a chance to get
Well,
Boise
Army,
State.
Navy play each other.
Army. Well, if they play each other in the conference championship, they'll play against each other. But they'll play each other after the playoff selection because remember that's the week after conference championships. So kind of criminal.
And they both got Notre Dame too, don't they?
They both have Notre Dame, so it's yeah, kind of crazy how Notre Dame's schedule all of a sudden. I think we previewed it as like one of the easiest schedules in college football when we talked about it in the offseason. I think we literally made a video on it, but a lot of it had to do is because they were playing service academies. So it's kind of crazy that all of a sudden the service academies are top 25 wins. Although USC, if they beat USC, it doesn't look like as good of a win there. But A&M on the road is looking like a really good win right now. Army, Navy, those would be really good wins for them, despite the loss in Northern Illinois. So the narrative around Notre Dame has definitely changed. So any other games you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll throw out the MAC here. Toledo versus Northern Illinois at Northern Illinois in DeKalb there. That was a big time matchup, right, in terms of MAC championship, MAC race complications there, or competition. Toledo, a big bounce back win after last week. Northern Illinois continues to struggle, right? Obviously, neither of these teams had their starting quarterback, so it was a little bit of an ugly football game, right? We saw some missed field goals. We saw some other things go on. Regardless, though, good win. Good win for Toledo on the road, getting it done without your quarterback and just continuing to kind of fight forward, see what you can do. And when you have a talent advantage against a lot of these football teams, you can play your B plus game and get a win even on the road potentially. So and it'll be interesting shake up there because obviously this week they've got Bowling Green, right? Still have Eastern Michigan on their schedule. Obviously, Western Michigan is playing fantastic after a tough start to the season, even though they've beaten up on potentially some of the bottom of the MAC, but they're still undefeated right now, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, the MAC will be interesting. I cannot wait for November to get that started. Midweek MAC.
Midweek action. All right. Are there any other games you really feel like we need to talk about before we get into the rest of our agenda today?
I mean, we could briefly talk about South Carolina, Oklahoma. Oh, we talked about that in our
We'll talk about that in our best
over-under,
bets.
yeah.
I'll say let's just move on. All right, let's just move
Good.
on. We'll get into our dirty dogs. If you're just listening to this for the first time, our dirty dogs are 10-point underdogs. CD and I pick two of them every single week. And I believe there were 3 10-point underdogs to win straight up. If I'm correct in that, someone in the comments can correct me that if I didn't get that number right. But we picked 2 of them. Almost picked 3 of them. Almost picked 4 of them. I guess we'll get into them. So the first one, I had the first pick of the board. Old Dominion plus 300 at home against Texas State. They've been giving teams lots of problems, and it hasn't looked pretty. But they kind of stomped Texas State there. They made that offense look absolutely desolate. And They did enough offensively to generate point. They generated 28 points, which for Old Dominion, the way that they've honestly played defense this year, it's been enough. So credit to Old Dominion getting a nice little win there in the Sun Belt, making sure that things in the Sun Belt stay super interesting. So yeah, I'll eat that up at plus 300. The second pick was you. You had UAB. You took them plus 400. Man, that was a really good pick. That was a really good pick. I know it didn't win outright, but that was a good find for you. I would have never thought that. I would have never picked UAB just based on how terrible they played football. But you saw something there, and I guess I'll let you talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, UAB really took control of that game for a lot of that football game. Really, the first 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, until USF kind of went on a run there. Turnovers just killed me, just absolutely killed me. But credit Jalen Kitna for putting up some good numbers, playing well, fighting for this UAB football team. I thought they'd have a chance to go on the road there, steal one against the USF Bulls, and get their first win in the American. South Florida got that win though, which is big for them. They needed that in that program. Alex Golish trying to build momentum even without their starting quarterback. And Archie did not look great. He made some plays, but obviously it's a big drop off from Brown, at least the talent that Brown has, even though he hasn't been fantastic this year. But yeah, I thought I could steal one. Felt good about it. Was exciting, and then obviously it didn't pan out. But that's what's kind of been my theme this year so far. I've been close but no cigar.
Yeah, it's well, you did hit one. And we'll talk about it in just a second here. But Stanford plus 500 was my second third dog. I was deciding between Stanford and Georgia Southern to be my last team. Georgia Southern ended up getting the outright win against James Madison. Stanford got smacked. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to stay off Stanford a little bit here. Normally like the recipe for an underdog is like, maybe this underdog doesn't play great defense, but maybe they can generate enough explosive plays. Maybe they're at home. Maybe there's a weird schedule dynamic for the other team. Maybe there's a travel dynamic. I thought, hey, traveling across the country, I like Troy Taylor. Their offense right now is a mess. Okay, they cannot move the football against anyone right now, and SMU was playing really good football. Should not have faded them at all. That was a big mistake by me. Big mistake, huge. All right, so I'm going to I'll wear that one on the chin and just stay regretting that I didn't take Georgia Southern, who we talked about as being a really good team in the Sun Belt here. So yeah, and then you hit your dirty dog. Finally, let's
On the
go.
board. On the
On the
board here.
board, New Mexico State plus 360, which was super smelly because that was a weeknight game. That was that Tuesday night. That's why it was so important that we record. We wanted to record this, the episode, and get it out by Tuesday so you could get that dirty dog out there, and you got it. So that was huge. They cashed, and in overtime, and it was awesome. They went and drove down the field at the end of that game, scored a touchdown scored a touchdown, kicked the field goal, basically sent it to overtime, whatever it was. It was a really nicely played football game by the Aggies over there. Yeah, it was awesome. So, any thoughts from you? I mean, you're finally on the board. It's got to feel good.
Felt great. Don't know if I really deserved that one. Holy cow. Came up big in overtime. I think they had a blocked field goal, right? If I can remember all the way back to
Oh
Tuesday
yeah.
at the end of the game, which was wild. And but yeah, felt great way to start the week off. Obviously, didn't carry over to my best bets, and regardless, so it was fun. Obviously, excited for Tony Sanchez and the Aggies over there in New Mexico State.
We on the year 8-24 picking these dirty dogs. That's a 25% clip right there. So if your team pops up on our dirty dogs list, if the team that your favorite team is playing against pops up on this dirty dogs list, you could be in trouble. There's about a 25% chance that you lose. So if you were actually to follow our plays the entire season, you would be up 7.65 units on the entire year, which is, I'd say that's pretty awesome, given that we're just picking two, and sometimes 10-point underdogs, maybe there's like one or two. Sometimes there isn't even any in a given week. Although this year I can say that we've had a 10-point upset at least once in every single week this season. So as lines are going to get sharper as the season goes on. I have a feeling this is going to get a lot harder. But we're going to keep grinding. We're going to keep finding these underdogs because they're there. They're smelly. They're stinky. They are dirty. So I'm loving it. Something that we didn't do, though, well this week is our best bets. I was 3-4 on my best bets, and you were 1-5 on your best bets. We actually shared two of them, lost both of them. I mean, South Carolina, Oklahoma under 41.5. I'm going to right side that one, say that we should have absolutely cashed that. Two defensive touchdowns early kind of screwed us, and then a field goal in the fourth quarter. After two teams, both of them didn't really play all that great of offense. I mean, South Carolina moved the ball a little bit at times, but I mean, in a game with that horrible of an offense being played, I mean, we should have cashed that thing by a mile. So BYU minus 9.5 was tough. BYU actually came back, won that game. That was kind of crazy. I did not expect the effort like that from Oklahoma State, especially when they announced Garrett Rangel as the quarterback. I thought, wow, that was free, great value. Let's go. But no, just not a good play ended up being there. So we both missed on that. I cashed Old Dominion plus 10.5. I talked about in the Dirty Dogs. That was money. Florida, Kentucky under 43. That was crazy. You had a defensive touchdown. You had a special teams touchdown. You had explosive plays. Just scoring that I did not anticipate at all. So I'm sorry. I don't know if, I guess in hindsight I would take it back, but I don't know. It just felt right to me. It is what it is. Probably shouldn't be relying on two quarterbacks that are prone to turning the ball over. It is what it is. Duke FSU under 42.5. That was huge. That's actually one that I probably shouldn't have hit. Actually, correction. I don't know whether I shouldn't have hit it or absolutely should have hit it by flying colors, because that was another game where you had a special teams touchdown and a defensive touchdown. So every under that I took, there was a special teams and a defensive touchdown in that game, or two defensive touchdowns. So those are just under killers. So it is what it is, and but that one cashed. Clemson first half minus 12 did not cash. Is what it is. I mean, they ended up figuring it out later in the game, and then Toledo plus 3 against Northern Illinois. They won straight up in that game. So I'm overall in the season 28-20, up 5.48 units on the season, and still feel pretty good about where I'm at. Just I felt really good about this board this week, so it's a little bit disappointing that I did not come out with that, because I think I said on the preview show that this is my favorite board that I've seen all season long. So, and to have it come out in a 3-4 weekend, it's kind of tough. But your weekend was a little tougher. But you're still 21-18 on the year.
Still positive.
Up 1.11 units on the season. Your losses were South Carolina, Oklahoma under 41.5, like me. BYU minus 9.5. USC minus 7.5, which, you had some injuries going in that game. Then you were also up 14 at one point. So Georgia, Texas over 55.5. LSU, Arkansas over 54.5. And your win was Colorado State minus 7 against Air Force, who won by 8. So what are your thoughts? What's your analysis for your board right here?
Listen, I felt pretty good about a lot of these. Obviously, you talked about South Carolina and Oklahoma under, as well as the BYU game. Those were killers there. Felt pretty good. Probably would take them again, but damn, it was credit to Oklahoma State and battling in that football game. USC, Maryland, that killed me there. USC is a team I'm done betting on, because I have, other than 1 week, I have been kind of riding them a little bit, and it's been rough the past couple weeks here, but that was tough. Happy for Maryland to get that win there. And then Colorado State, the one game I won. I probably shouldn't have. I got at 7, and the only reason it covered at 8 points was because they went for a 2-point conversion when they didn't really need to, and they just kind of did, and they didn't get it. So obviously that was terrifying to see them line up and potentially lose that and go 0-6 on the week. But I'll take it for sure. And then the UGA at Texas over, I felt really good about that, and it had a good chance to, that fourth quarter, no scoring happened. Texas had multiple chances in Georgia's territory to score, and they couldn't get it done. And then LSU at Arkansas, maybe LSU's defense should be a little bit upgraded in my book. I was kind of impressed with them. I thought they played well. I thought I could get some value without, a guy like Kalen Green potentially being completely cleared to play, but he ended up playing, and obviously didn't play the best, but LSU played damn good, man. Damn good. I thought that over would be pretty sound. So, yeah, rough week for me, but I'll bounce back.
Yeah, I have a good feeling of it. I mean, we're still up as a show over 6.5 units, so I'm not concerned at all. You know, our dirty dogs are up, over 7.5 units. Our best bets are up over 6.5 units. We're doing fine. And as we're looking at games that we've picked, because we previewed, and we'll head over to these games as well. I mean, we're still net positive, on picking spreads and winners. And these are games that we don't necessarily have an edge. We just preview them and pick them. So for me, I guess I went 5-3 picking straight up, 5-3 ATS in the games that we previewed. My overall, winning record moves to 39-26, which is all right. I would hope that you and I would pick up straight up winners better, but a lot of these spreads are really short, so I don't blame us. A lot of the pros that are pick 'em records are so good because they're picking games that are like often 17 and 18 point spread. It's like, all right, okay, sure, you can take the wins in those games, but I move ATS. I move to 36-29, which is really good, I think, for not having an edge in any particular game. Uh, you went 3-5 both ATS and straight up. You moved to 38-27 for straight up winners, and 33-32 ATS. So you still are over 500 ATS. I think straight up winners. I think you and I can both do better, in that department, but it is what it is. So the I guess games we previewed: Miami, Louisville, Nebraska, Indiana, Arizona State, Cincinnati, Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan, Illinois, LSU, Arkansas, Georgia, Texas, North Texas, and Memphis. So we'll get into those. We'll get into those right away. But I guess first, sorry, we won't get into them right away. First, I'll ask you: do you regret any of your picks? Because I do. If I had known Jeff Sims was starting at quarterback, I would not have taken Arizona State. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, holy cow, that was a blessing in disguise for me. And then, wow, man, Nebraska, Indiana, that was incredible. We'll talk about that when we get there. And then I'm done with Michigan, man. I'm so done with Michigan. Holy cow. That one, those two definitely regret.
Yeah, biggest one I regret. I mean, the Arizona State, I don't regret taking them, knowing because I didn't know at the time when we recorded this that Jeff Sims was going to be the starter. But Texas being, yeah, I regret that one. If I was to go back in time, that'd be the one I'm like, yeah, why did I take Texas? I mean, it was very clear that they hadn't played anyone. Like, I know that they were getting them at home and they looked like a more complete football team, but just they were a little bit outclassed there. They were a little bit outclassed. So let's get into it. Miami, Louisville. What an awesome game, by the way. What an unreal 52-45 is your final score here in Louisville. Cam Ward, once again, is unbelievable late in this game and just actually the entire game. Just throwing seeds all over the place. I think he very clearly has worked his way up to, QB1, QB2 status in terms of the NFL draft. And I also think he's probably worked his way up to second place, if not first place in the Heisman race right now. If you're basing
Yeah.
it off of, Vegas odds and, what the experts are thinking. Cam Ward has been unbelievable. If they do not have Cam Ward, if this team has Tyler Van Dyke with the way, and I've been very disappointed with this defense because I think it has a lot of talent on it. I've been very, very disappointed with it. Cam Ward has been awesome. He is, like, if you were to tell me, yeah, I'm voting for Cam Ward over Ashton Genty at this point, I get it. I get it because he has been that valuable. He has been that outstanding. He has been that important to his football team where he just makes plays and makes a difference. And we talked about, where the quarterback edge is. We were like, yeah, it's probably Miami, but, Tyler Shuck is no slouch either. And he had a great game as well. He was 31 of 51 for 342 yards and a couple tuds. So this is a really good football game, man. I feel better about both teams moving forward. Like Miami being able to go on the road like that and win a football game like that. And then also Louisville to produce like that on offense and see Tyler Shuck. And we're starting to really see what Tyler Shuck looks like in a full season workload when he's healthy. And it's a pretty good football player.
It is, but both these teams have really good weapons. Obviously, I think the whole country got introduced into a guy like Isaac Brown for Louisville, the true freshman running back for them. Obviously, had the explosive touchdown, but also made some nice plays in the receiving game. I had one dropped. I think it was a touchdown potentially, but it was a really tough play. Regardless, like you said, Cam Ward was sensational. I want to highlight, though, the players around them that made monster plays. I think Sam Brown had a big running catch. Restrepo continues to be incredible. Those three running backs ran the ball very, very hard for Miami. Martinez, obviously the big run. Mark Fletcher, just a big barrel dude, especially third and short, fourth and short. I thought a couple times he was huge for them. And then AJ Allen, it was good to see him really run the ball well because we haven't seen that in a while, back to his Nebraska days. So, yeah, I mean, holy cow, this Miami offense is really, really hard. I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm not seeing a ton of elite defenses that are going to be able to really, compete with them, with Cam Ward. If he's playing the way he is right now, it's going to be really hard to stop them. And like you said, for Louisville, yeah, it was awesome. Competing, responding, especially, early in that third quarter when Miami just went down after halftime and just punched you right in the mouth. Absolutely. And then boom, boom, boom. What was it? That Colin Lacey had the kick return, and then you had the fumble, and then you had the touchdown right there. And then Miami responded with a big touchdown, and then you respond with a big drive. It was, like you said, great game. I'm bumping both these teams because of the success they had, because of how resilient they were in a great environment in Louisville. And yeah, holy cow, it was awesome. Like you said, it was awesome.
Yeah, just Jeff Brom brought his A ball, or he brought his fastball, and I've been loving how Mario Cristobal and the coaching staff has been able to adjust in second halves, which is something that they had trouble with in previous years. So Miami still got to be high on them, still need to earn more trust from Mario Cristobal, to really upgrade, his coaching rating, I guess, or however you would adjust your point spreads based on, the coaching matchups. But yeah, really, really talented teams, both of these teams. I think Louisville has a chance to do some damage in the rest of the way in the ACC as well. Indiana. I mean, it is so unfortunate that Curtis Rourke went down. I mean, it is so unfortunate. That Indiana football team is playing so well. They are a top 10 football team, and I don't have any doubt about that. I don't have any doubt about it. Now, it looks different with Curtis Rourke out. I know it's extended time. I don't know. It sounds like he should be able to return at some point in the season. It's just so unfortunate, man, because not that Indiana matches up with Ohio State, talent-wise, and they would have to go on the road against Ohio State, but I think there's a lot of teams in the country that Indiana can give a really good football game to. So they're not just beating teams, they're blowing out football teams. And they take it to Nebraska at home, 6.5 point spread. You win by 49 against that Nebraska team. You scored 56 points against that defense. And Taven Jackson, even in his limited playing time, he still looked pretty good there too. I mean, the coaching staff that they got there, Kurt Cignetti, Mike Shanahan, they're doing such a spectacular job with this football team. And I'm not even here to just dog on Nebraska. And yeah, I think the way that Dylan Raiola has been playing is, a little bit concerning moving forward through the rest of the season. I have no doubts he'll be a great quarterback down the road, but gosh, Indiana, what an unbelievable game by them.
Yeah, it was awesome. I will say I do think it did get out of hand in that second half because of, Nebraska was being aggressive, going for it on fourth down. Those interceptions obviously were big. But, not to take any credit away from Indiana and Cignetti, this fan base. It was awesome. Wasn't that great? Wasn't that great for you Indiana fans to see that at home? Marquee game, big noon kickoff was there. You ran the ball well. Curtis Rourke was super efficient. And then even your backup, right? When Jackson came in, I thought he played well too, slung the rock pretty darn well. He gives you an interesting dimension there, running the football. So, yeah, we'll see how Indiana moves forward without Curtis Rourke. Obviously, we talked about Rourke, and that was one of his things, was an injury history at Ohio. Now this is a fluke injury, it was a thumb. You're not going to – it just happens, right? That it sucks. It absolutely does. But holy cow, I do hope they can survive the next couple weeks because I do think the showdown off a bye against Ohio State – obviously, Ohio State will be, not heavily favored, but significant favorites in that football game. And obviously, you mentioned that talent edge, but the coaching matchups, the buzz, the intrigue, it's awesome. I think it's really exciting for Indiana. As for Nebraska, I'm not pulling the plug on Rilo, like you said. I'm not pulling the plug on Matt Rule. They just got outclassed. They outcoached. They outclassed in this football game. You get down early there. You have a couple things that just don't go your way with the fourth down conversion, the interceptions, right? Things that just didn't quite get going offensively, especially running the ball early in the game. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen on the road. That's what happens when you can't run the ball on the road. So a lot was put on Raiola. I don't think that's the recipe going forward, but holy cow, did Indiana handle Nebraska's defense. They were just cutting through them like they weren't even there in that second quarter on. Holy cow. It was awesome. It's really excited to see. This is a great football game. I don't know how serious of a playoff contender Indiana is right now, but I am very open to the idea that they could absolutely be there for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000%. And I talked about like in our previews, right? And we both talked about, how high we are on Illinois and Indiana, right? Like how we think that this roster turnover that they did, like we don't think that they just got players, they got good players. And it's hard to see sometimes when you get G5 transfers at the offensive line position, it doesn't always work out, you know? But in this case, I don't think Indiana brought in any G5 transfers on the offensive line. They just have a good coaching staff, and these guys are just playing unreal. They're just playing unreal. I mean, I cannot be giving enough credit to Indiana's offensive line, and then of course the defense. You bring in a ton of James Madison transfers on that side of the
plays.
ball.
Holy cow, making plays.
They're just making plays. Mikhail Kamara, I mean, with 5 sacks on the season, he's just playing unreal. I mean, you've just got playmakers all over the place, and they're not. I wonder, if they get to a team like Ohio State, like what that. It's a different class of athleticism, I think, of athlete, but is it crazy to? I'm not ready to give the coaching edge to Indiana in that game, but I think there can be a conversation about it.
I think that's more so the story is that it's not even about knocking Ohio State's coaching staff, even though I was a little disappointed with the game in the Oregon game, but I still trust Jim Knowles. I still trust Kelly and Ryan Day offensively there.
It's a great staff.
It's a great staff. But I do think it's more about how good Indiana's staff is. That's the real conversation. That's the real storyline there. Yes, there's an actual conversation to be had, not because of Ohio State's disappointing season, not because of Ohio State's, we're dropping that coaching staff. No, it's because Indiana is doing things, elevating players, putting them in great schemes, finding fits early. They have not trailed all season, right? That's the stat that's going around right now. And that continued all day yesterday.
They've also covered the spread in 6 straight games, and these are some big spreads. The only game that they haven't covered the spread in was the closing line of Indiana FIU. It closed at 24.5, and they won by 24. And I believe that number opened less than that. So depending on where you got the number at, Indiana's covered in every single game this season. Just like
Wagged.
They are so good, and I know that that's going to downgrade. Now you don't have Curtis Rourke. We'll see. We'll see how Taven Jackson does moving forward. And I still feel good about Nebraska, making a bowl game and, having a good season, playing some teams tough. The defensive line, there's still a lot of goals that you can have. I think Matt Rule's done a good job building this team and in his second year. So I'm not going to downgrade Nebraska a ton, even though they just got absolutely waxed by Indiana. I just think Indiana's really good. So nothing to slander Nebraska about necessarily. Let's head over to the Big 12. Cincinnati hosted Arizona State. It was the Jeff Sims game. I mean, you knew that he stunk. He stinks. Actually didn't throw a pick, which I was surprised about. So
he didn't play awful. I do think he did miss some, like you saw the inaccuracy and the inconsistencies at time, and it's still happening, right? As a veteran, Jeff Sims is coming along. That was potential turning points in the football game. Obviously, the missed field goals too played to that, but Cincinnati jumped on him, right, in that first half, and you sit there, you're up 24-7, and it's just hard to picture a Jeff Sims as he is right now in this offense and the way it's constructed to be able to like realistically come back and win that football game.
Even if Levitt's in that game, I don't know that, he's necessarily built to come back either, right? But I mean, early you talked about getting jumped on as well. It could have been worse too. I mean, because Sorsby, they were driving early and then they threw that red zone interception.
Yeah.
That ultimately led to an Arizona State touchdown. So Yeah, Cincinnati's a good football team. We've been talking about it all year. I also think Arizona State might be all right. Also was impressed with Brian Ward. Thought he, once again, coached another really good football game. I hope he continues to remain on this Arizona State staff for a long time because he's very good. Kenny Dillingham is very good. Um, and yeah, I guess we were talking about, would you rather have Brennan Sorsby or Curtis Rourke on your football team at quarterback? I guess Curtis Rourke. I know he got hurt, but feels like Curtis Rourke kind of won this round. Brendan Sorsby looked all right. He was okay, but I think there were other aspects of Cincinnati that you showed that you were able to win in other ways, which is pretty nice. Sorsby played all right. Yeah,
Yeah,
Cincinnati continues to just kind of lurk in the Big 12 sneakily, finding ways to win football games. I mean, they're not a bad football team, guys. They're not a bad football team.
not at all. And honestly, like you said, different ways. They ran the ball well. They had some explosive runs with Evan Pryor. And like I said in the preview, we're still waiting on that deep ball to be unlocked. I do think that would give this offense an absolute added dimension for Scott Satterfield and Sorsby. They've got weapons like Henderson and Mays to be able to push the ball down the field. I will say, Joe Royer, the tight end number 11, I've been really impressed with him. The Shaman Meta year, right? He was the tight end last year. He transferred to Colorado, back at Arizona State now. So kind of a revenge game, a return game for him back to Cincinnati. But Joe Royer has looked really good for them. I was really impressed with the way he played yesterday, or I guess on Saturday, but depending on when you're watching this football game, this video. But like you said, Cincinnati, all of a sudden they got a legit Big 12 showdown in Colorado next week. Both these teams are 3-1 in the conference. They're kind of crazy to see some winnable football games also the rest of the way for both of those teams. So that'll be a big one. We'll definitely be circling that one. Night game there in Boulder. So very exciting for Cincinnati. Tough for Arizona State, but they do have opportunities to make a bowl game the rest of the year. They're 5-2. Oklahoma State and some winnable football games elsewhere. So yeah, I think it's awesome. Still not going to take anything away from Kenny Dillingham and the staff here. Didn't love his post game press conference calling out the kicker. Obviously, I know he it's emotional. I get that, and he kind of made a statement about his apologies and how sincere he was about that. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they do get a kicking game because you're going to need that, especially in these close games, these small margins of the Big 12 potentially. So yeah, good for Cincinnati though. Big win for them.
And their only loss is a 3-point loss to Texas Tech. I know they were down like 17 points in the fourth quarter of that game, and ended up coming back and still lost. But yeah, they could do some damage. I mean, these are the teams that they get later on in the season that they could do damage to. I mean, they get Iowa State, that's on the road. You get Kansas State, that's on the road. Colorado on the road. Those are all pretty tough games. All teams that are kind of competing for a shot at the Big 12 championship. But Cincinnati is in a prime position to really shake some stuff up in the Big 12. Is Cincinnati going to be that keystone team that just blows everything up for the Big 12 and makes it just so that it's only a one bid league? Maybe. Is it already a one bid league? I don't know. Because BYU's undefeated right now. I don't know. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff over here in the Big 12. Let's move over to the SEC. Arguably a conference just as interesting right now with the way things are shaking up. Tennessee beats Alabama. And once again, Alabama, 0 run game with other people not named Jalen Milroe. And it is brutal. Their defense, I thought, actually put up a pretty dang good effort. To lose the way that they did, I know they played on the road. It was a tough game. I actually picked Tennessee in this game to win straight up. But man, Alabama already 2 losses in the SEC at this point. I mean, backs kind of against the wall. Bama fans are already pissed at Kalen DeBoer and the staff for ruining this dynasty and whatnot. It's still a lot of time left to be determined whether or not Kalen DeBoer ruined this program or not. But yeah, just a lot of the things offensively that you were concerned about with Alabama, in terms of like having to rely on the explosive play, were kind of, realized once again, and it caught up to them. Tennessee did a really nice job finding a way to win against what I think is still a good Alabama team. I know people maybe disagree with that, but I think Alabama's still a good football team. But they got beat.
Yeah, Milroe probably played his worst game he's had in a long time. I think maybe since last year against Texas, potentially on the road. I think this Tennessee defense and that D line really gave Bama troubles, and they couldn't run the football. Milroe was running for his life. He had no trust in his pocket at all, which I think led to some inaccurate passes, potential turnovers as well. With the 2 interceptions, they obviously tried to get Ryan Williams involved a lot and early, and they couldn't quite connect.
20 targets.
Yeah, yeah. Holy cow. But obviously, credit Tennessee and being resilient after another brutal first half offensively that you buckled down, you scored 24 points. You started to see some of the playmakers make some plays. Dylan Sampson, star. You saw Brew McCoy. You saw Dante Thornton with a big catch. You saw Chris Brazell with the touchdown. Those are players that Tennessee needs to get going if they're going to be able to compete and continue to play well. Start playing well, really, the rest of the way down the stretch with that offense. Nico obviously missed some big time throws down the field. You had open guys streaking. We talked about that as potential possibility where you're going to have open guys down the field against Alabama. And can you connect? And he couldn't. Hopefully he is healthy. I know he did take that big hit or that awkward hit, really. And I know they have a bye week to kind of get rest there before they start their second half of their SEC schedule. But yeah, big win for Tennessee. Josh Heupel, very gritty win. Obviously, this is not the Tennessee we've kind of come to know under Josh Heupel, but that's the reality of this football team this year. This is how they're going to kind of have to win football games. Play tough defense, play stingy defense, opportunistic defense, and then kind of have strike offenses where you have hit some big plays, you get going, and you score in short bursts there because it's not quite super consistent as it is right now. Yeah, like you said, that running game for Bama needs to get going. Milroe is not a drop pack 45 times a game type of quarterback. He's just not. And everyone's blaming him right now. Everyone's blaming whoever you want to talk about. But I think for Alabama to start winning games in the SEC and compete in the back half of their schedule, they got LSU in a couple weeks, Missouri next week. Like, you're going to have to run the football, I think. And that has to really change if we want to see actual change on the field for Alabama. But I do think their defense played well. I mean, they gave up points in the second half, but they were really resilient in that first half.
Definitely. But 15 penalties too.
Oh God, yeah. Well, both teams had a lot of penalties.
I know. It was just one of those. You probably had a crew that was prone on the flags. This hasn't been the first time that Alabama's been caught with a lot of penalties. A lot of penalties, man.
No, three for 14 on third down. That's the thing. If you're Alabama, you're gonna go on the road and win this football game, right? Rivalry game, hostile environment, right? Struggling, momentum for your team and your program, whatever. Like, you win the possession battle pretty handily, right? 33 minutes to 26 minutes. You win the turnover battle, right? And you shut out that offense in that first half. You had to build more of a lead in that first half if you're going to be able to kind of ride it out that second half. And they didn't. And they responded, right? Until they just didn't. And they kind of ran out of gas in the fourth quarter there. That one penalty from Kendrick Law was brutal because I thought he played a pretty good game. I thought he did some things for him, in the run game as well. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. Let's head over. We got a Big Ten game. Just an ugly one. Illinois comes out with the win against Michigan. How? I putting the ball in the end zone more times than Michigan? I guess.
Just
this is
picking up
game.
the ball when Michigan just dropped it.
Yes. So I mean, you have 5 sacks though. That Illinois defense. Gabe Hawkins once again showed that he is a weapon, dude. He's really good. Okay, we've talked about him for a couple years now, being just a supreme athlete. They kind of not waiting. I mean, he already was really good, but this game he really showed how his dynamic athleticism can, I guess, kind of take over a football game. I mean, he was really exceptional in this football game. Luke Altmaier wasn't, and I thought Luke Altmaier would be really good in this game. He didn't have Caden Fegan. Credit to Illinois for finding a different way to win a football game, not having to rely on Luke Altmaier and his deep passes, and not having Caden Fegan in there at running back to neither of those two guys were there to really bail you out or I guess Allmar was there, but he just didn't play good enough football to really bail you out. And you just found a different way to win a football game. So credit to Illinois, man. They're bowl game eligible at this point, right?
Yeah, they're 6-1. They're moving on up in the Big Ten rankings there. Michigan continues to plummet as well. I mean, it'll be an interesting matchup there at Oregon for Illinois. Obviously, a much different team you're going to be playing out there in Eugene, but for sure winnable. Obviously, it's the Big Ten. Who knows what can happen there? But yeah, I mean, Michigan had what, like 37 dropbacks, like way too many dropbacks for that to be happening. I think almost 40 actually. Khalil Mullins only had 19 carries, and he was efficient in a lot of them. And so, like, again, what's going on there? Keep feeding them the rock. I know it's hard to be consistent when you have zero weapon other than, or zero threat other than your semi-okay running game, and then Colson Loveland, who was just getting force-fed a ton of targets there, which ended up turning into a turnover at one point. But yeah, I think Michigan's got some real problems here. I thought Illinois, even though it wasn't through the air, I thought they moved the ball well and just, did some good things here and there, and were able to just kind of outlast Illinois or outlast Michigan. And the fake punt was awesome, right? I think that was the first drive of the second half for Illinois. Obviously, that kind of put the game away. Once you go up 14 points in the second half against Michigan, you feel really good about the way the rest of the game can go, because there's zero threat there. I wonder what happens at quarterback there. I don't know if there is an answer. I think it's just going to be the reality of the season. It's just they're going to beat teams because their defense and that defensive line, but they're going to lose some teams that can block them somewhat and can just shut down anything they want to do offensively. And also, if you are turning the ball over like that, giving up a fourth down conversion, like, you just have such a narrow way of victory, and they're just not playing well enough to be upholding that or be doing that consistently in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough right now for Michigan fans. You need some semblance of offense, because I mean, last year you had the best defense in the country, and arguably historically good defense as well. But you had a really good quarterback. You had enough explosive playmakers. You had a really good offensive line, a solid run game. You still were pretty balanced on offense, even though you weren't the most explosive team. Just when your offense is this bad, it's hard to win football games, man. It's hard to win football games. It's hard to win football games on the road, especially because defense, I mean, generally travels, but with the drop off on the defensive production from Michigan this year from last year, she can't play like that on offense and expect to win football games. You can't.
Well,
I know
and
Illinois,
you're giving up short fields.
Giving up short fields. They did outgain Illinois, but yeah, the 3 turnovers. I mean, Illinois taking care of the football. Once again, Luke Allmar taking care of the football, man. It's winning them football games.
Yeah, I was disappointed with Tuttle, man. I upgraded them. I thought what he did last week against Washington, come off the bench there a little bit. Like, I thought it was impressive. Like, I was excited. I was kind of like, maybe they're turning a corner here. That's why I picked them to win this football game. And yes, sometimes it was there, sure, but it not consistently. Nothing near what it should have been or what could have been for them to be able to win this football game.
LSU went to Fayetteville, kind of handed it to Arkansas. Kind of handed it to them. Garrett Nussmeier looked good. They were efficient, 8 of 15 on third down. Once again, not giving up a sack. They still have not given up a sack on Garrett Nussmeier since the South Carolina football game. Caden Durham, you talked about it. You're like, hey, what is LSU going to need to do to win this game on the road? They're going to have to run the football. Caden Durham was certainly that jolt of energy that they needed. The true freshman running back, a little bit smaller, just so fast, though, so explosive. He was over 100 yards and a touchdown. He was good. LSU was good, man. And this is the right time, because you got to go next week to Kyle Field against another team that's undefeated in the SEC. The only 2 undefeated teams in the SEC are LSU and Texas A&M. You're going to need to win that game if you want a chance at the playoffs, you want a chance at the SEC championship, and to be playing good football like this right now. And, honestly, I've been saying I've been underwhelmed with LSU's defense. I was very impressed with them this week. And I know I've said some negative things, maybe not negative things about Blake Baker, just maybe,
more cautious.
yeah, I'm just cautiously optimistic, right, about everything going on there. So I guess I'll say that this defense is mightily improved from last year, and it looked really good on the road too against a couple dynamic athletes.
Yeah, and for Arkansas, man, you just missed opportunities in that first half, especially led to kind of the domino and the kind of pummeling that happened in that second half. You talked about missed field goal, you had the fumble, and then once you start pressing in that second half, right, the interception, the fumble, like just things kind of got out of hand there. And obviously, you're not going to keep down that offense and Nussmeier, and especially if they're running the ball well, down that long for too long, right? I thought Andrew Armstrong made some nice plays early on. He's a really good football player, but you couldn't get Jackson or Dubinion going, and you couldn't get Taylor Green going on the ground. Too much was relied upon him through the air. And credit LSU's defense and that game plan, they and the players that they had making plays to be able to force that issue, and it really was an issue for Arkansas. Now, LSU, we talked about them earlier in this episode where, there they are, 3-0 in conference. It's them and A&M right now who are on a collision course, I think, next week, right, in College Station, which will be an awesome football game. Two teams that are atop the SEC, but no one really believes they are the two best teams. I think this is a great opportunity for them to prove that and potentially get a signature win on their schedule. It was awesome for Arkansas. Obviously, this would have been another massive win for Sam Pittman. Obviously, a home football game in Fayetteville. There start to build some momentum. Continue that momentum after the Tennessee game. But you look at that back half of the schedule. I mean, a bowl game is certainly in play, but there's still some tough teams on that schedule. Some fighting, frisky teams in the Bulldogs starting next week with Mississippi State on the road there. So we'll see what happens there the rest of the way for Arkansas, but I hope Jaquindon Jackson's healthy. I think he kind of got banged up. I couldn't quite tell if he came back in and whatnot, but obviously with those two guys, with Green and Jackson, if they're playing good, they're playing healthy, this is a much different football team, especially offensively. That needs to change, I think, in this week and starting next week with Starkville or in Starkville.
Another thing too, like being able to run the ball allows you to just control the game. If you look at their time of possession, LSU had the ball for 38 minutes, right? And the reason that they were able to do that, it's first downs. Just getting first downs, creating short change, right? We talked about 8 of 15 on third down, but they also converted a third down on every single possession that they're in, that they, except of course the one where they got the ball on like the 2-yard line to punch it in. And the other time when they just ran the clock out to halftime. I don't know. Actually, they might have even gotten a first down in that possession. They did. They got a first down in every single possession. Except I guess their last possession was the only one where they didn't. That was with 1:30 left to go in the game. So just controlling the game. You only gave Arkansas 10 possessions, and they only scored 10 points with it. So you're gonna win football games when you're able to run the ball, convert on third down, and also just make sure like that your defense, which again talked about being a little bit impressed with Blake Baker and their performance this week, but it is the weak point of this football team. Keep your offense on the field. Keep your defense off the field. It's that simple. If your offense is better than your defense, keep it simple, stupid, and dominate the football games. Run the ball, and convert on third down. You're gonna win a lot of football games doing that, and you need to do that against Texas A&M because Texas A&M wants to control the football game. They want to run the football, and they're gonna be at home. So, second straight road game for LSU. It'll be another test. If they win that game against Texas A&M, I'm gonna be looking at LSU and be like, all right, okay. If Garrett Nussmeier plays at a high enough level, they could win the SEC. So
he's going to play himself into a lot of money, not only with NIL, potentially Heisman, conversation, right? I don't think it's an actual. I don't know if he'll actually win it, but that, and then also the NFL draft too, with his arm talent and the games that they have coming down the stretch, right? You mentioned A&M, Alabama, dare I say Vanderbilt, and potentially right whatever postseason that they have with the SEC championship game potentially, and then also potential playoffs and other things that are going. A lot of big football games for Nussmeier.
Georgia absolutely kicked Texas's teeth in. You had to play Arch Manning. First of all, I don't know if I necessarily agreed with that move at all. Like, unless you legitimately thought that Arch Manning was going to win you that football game, and you were going to ride with him the rest of the way out. I don't know. I mean, Quinn Ewers, I guess, wasn't doing it, and you do owe it to your team to try to give yourself the best chance to win a football game. If you did believe that was Arch Manning, then okay, sure. Georgia's defense, man, was impressive. And it's not like Georgia's offense was, like, spectacular.
Sure, 3 turnovers, 3 picks from Carson Beck, bro.
Yeah, like, Texas had every opportunity to be in this game and win it. And they just did nothing. Credit to the Georgia defense. 7 sacks on that offensive line. An offensive line that we previewed before the season being potentially one of the best position groups in the entire country. 7 sacks. Jalen Milroe, and more you're looking back at that Georgia-Alabama game, and the more and more you have to give credit to Jalen Milroe and just making explosive plays. It is, yeah, Georgia probably should be undefeated if they had played,
competent first half.
Yeah, if they'd played something of a decent first half, they could have absolutely won that game. But yeah, Carson Beck wasn't amazing. They didn't run the ball particularly well. They did run the ball, I think, better than I thought they were going against Texas. I did pick Texas in this game. I regret doing it. It's clear that they hadn't really been tested yet, and I think you exposed some things on Texas that, like for instance, their wide receivers. I know people were already sold on Texas wide receivers being fantastic. Weren't able to get a ton of separation. Not that Quinn Ewers had a lot of time. Also, Quinn Ewers, when he gets pressure on him, his whole entire career, he hasn't been good. He has never been particularly good under pressure. His pressure to sack rate before entering the season was like 33%. When he gets pressure in his face, he just goes down. Right? So, and that we talked about, you asked me, where does the quarterback edge lie in this game? I'm like, I don't know if there is one, right? But I'm like, if you were to tell me, if you were maybe pick one, right, I'd probably pick Carson Beck because he has been playing better football than Quinn Ewers because Quinn Ewers is hurt and he didn't play that well in that game coming off the injury. But it wasn't the quarterbacks that won this game like I thought they were, right? I thought it was going to be the better quarterback in this game was going to win the football game maybe. And, whoever doesn't turn the ball over or takes care of the football, neither team took care of the football. Neither quarterbacks played well. It came down to, where did the turnovers happen? Were you able to capitalize on them? And getting pressure on Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, if you told me Carson Beck was going to be 23 of 41, right, not very efficient, only 175 yards, not very explosive, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, I would have said, uh-oh. Uh-oh.
How much did Texas win by?
It would have been, is anyone going to stop Texas this year? That literally would have been like, okay, is the season over? Like, is Texas that good? But holy cow, you got to give a ton of credit to Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, that Georgia coaching staff. Obviously, the players made fantastic plays. Jalen Walker made himself a ton of money. Obviously, was going to be a high pick regardless, but he was incredible. But the way that they schemed up some of those pressures, the way they schemed up those looks against Quinn Ewers, I mean, he was in turmoil there. And then, of course, they threw an Arch Manning to the Wolves. Part of me, too, think part of that was, like you said, you owe it to your team to at least see if something was nothing was working, right? It was not working. And the only play that they had like a real chance to actually score on in that first half was the end around or like the flea flicker type thing, that trick play basically. And then Wisner dropped the ball. That was your only chance to like really move the football there. And obviously Georgia's defense got to stop there. And you had to, I think, punt, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, ton of credit goes to Georgia and that staff there. Part of me also thinks it's like there's a lot of conversation about, okay, should Manning be playing? And as soon as you saw Quinn Ewers struggle early on, I'm sure a lot of people, Texas fans and potentially Texas players, were like, well, maybe Mark Manning should be the guy, and his legs can maybe help this offensive line who was struggling. And I think part of it was like Sark was just like, I'm going to throw him in there at the end of the first half. If something sparks, awesome. I think he's obviously a really talented football player. He can do it. But part of it was also like, A, Quinn Ewers, you have to play better. And B, like, let's stop this conversation that Manning is going to give, a better edge for this football team than Quinn Ewers is. I am a firm believer that Quinn Ewers is the ceiling of this team. I think he is the best chance they have to win a title. Can they win a title with Arch Manning? For sure. He can develop. He can get better for sure. But I do think Quinn Ewers is the upside of this football team. So part of that was like, to me, I took it like Sark is just like, screw you guys. Let's see what happens here. I'm not that I'm putting him in a bad spot, but I'm kind of putting him in a bad spot. If he succeeds, awesome. But if he fails, I'm going to go right back to Ewers, who is our best chance to win this football game and the rest of the season. So, yeah, incredible game, incredible atmosphere. I thought late Texas might have had a chance to make it a football game, and they just couldn't quite convert. In my over 55.5, super, super brutal. I mean, it was at 55 for what? 10 minutes left in that fourth quarter or whatever it was, and Texas had a couple opportunities to score. They had a fumble when they were driving. They had turnover on downs, at the 29. Then they had turnover downs on the 11-yard lines.
Overturned.
Yeah.
Some people threw some stuff on the field.
Yeah. First of all, classy look by Texas State fans, right? Classic look by Texas State students. Just kind of brutal. But I don't know. That was crazy. I'm not going to get into that because I don't know the rules on that. I'm not an official. I do think it's crazy to overturn it the way they did. I do think they probably got the call right. So at the end of the day,
they did get the call right.
As a college football fan, I'm just going to, okay, whatever. I do think that sets a bad precedent. I do think they do need to fix something with that. And it was obviously just a bad look for Texas fans to be throwing stuff on the field. It's dangerous. It's disrespectful. It takes away from the game. Credit Sark for just running over there and just yelling at the student section. I got to give him a lot of credit for that. But
yeah. It's not on Sark, but people were like, oh, why is Kirby Smart bringing that up in his post game interview? It's like, why wouldn't he? Right?
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous, and I'm not going to comment much further on that. I just do think it was okay and correct for Kirby Smart to address that because it was an issue. It was stupid. It was dangerous. All right. And on top of that, like you said, sets precedent. And he mentioned that as well in his post-game interview. So,
and it was a massive turning point in the football game. Now, obviously, it was the right call, so it should have happened. But Georgia, it made it an 8-point ball game, and then Georgia went down and scored. Credit to them. Etienne was fantastic on that drive. So and Delp had the big play. So it was it was a good game. I think I still feel pretty good about Texas being where I thought they were. I took Georgia in this game because I thought Texas was a little bit overrated. I thought they didn't play anybody. I thought the defense was not as good as everyone thought, even though defense actually did some things for Carson Beck. Yeah. Actually played pretty well, but I don't know. I still am not going to sell the boat on Texas. I obviously bumping up Georgia just a little bit because we do see when they do play their potential defensively, right, this is what can happen. And you're still waiting on Carson Beck in that offense to really kind of hit a second gear. And
for 4 quarters.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, for 4 quarters in a big football game. So we'll see. Obviously, this was an awesome game, awesome environment. Let's see what happens the rest of the way out. I do think Texas looks very vulnerable. I think Georgia's also looked vulnerable at times too. So it's cool to see in the SEC. There's a lot of parity at the top there. There's some teams that potentially, can give some other teams problems. And obviously, no one is invincible in the SEC. And that's going to be the reality, I think, of the SEC going forward with all this talent, all this coaching talent, all these stars, fan bases, brutal environments. You're going to see, it's going to be very hard to run the table. And it is week 8. And there's no undefeated team in the SEC.
Speaking of good defenses, not North Texas, Memphis, 52-44, Memphis being your victor in this football game. And I said, first of all, credit Chandler Morris. What an absolute effort from that guy. What an effort from this Eric Morris coached football team to be in this football game. I said, my eyes told me that I thought that Memphis' defense was much improved. And little did I know I fell for the same thing I fell for with, Texas. They just hadn't really played a lot of good offenses. And when they did, they played against Navy, they got shelved. And I just thought, hey, maybe that offense is it's very unique. It's difficult to prepare for. I get why you gave up a big game right there. And when North Texas has played some good defenses, more athletic defenses, they've struggled greatly. 650 total yards of offense from Chandler Morris and North Texas. I mean, they didn't just throw the ball over the yard. They ran the ball for 200. They threw the ball for 445 yards and ran for 208. Unreal that they were in this football game. I mean, it's the turnovers that cost them this football game. North
Yeah.
Texas could have won this football game, and they would have actually put themselves in the driver's seat to actually like do some real damage in the American Conference. Because remember, North Texas, I mean, what their one loss is to Texas Tech, right? So it wasn't even a conference game. They would have been undefeated, moving forward with a win over Memphis, and Memphis would have had their second loss in the American. Kind of at this point, it would have maybe eliminated them from. Well, yeah, it would have eliminated from their college football playoff hopes, but it also would have like eliminated them potentially from the American Conference Championship. Just so credit Memphis. That was awesome effort right there. Or sorry, credit North Texas, and I do want to credit Memphis. For finding a way to win the football game, taking care of the football. Seth Henneken getting it done at home.
Yeah, he was efficient. Mario Anderson, I've been waiting for him to really start taking over in some of these American football games. He's looked good early on, but he was big for them. Obviously, had the long carry, 53 yards as well. But yeah, man, to me, it was Chandler Morris was awesome. Running the football, you saw him make some big plays. Obviously, the North Texas was beneficiary of explosive plays, but I also think that is part of their recipe. That is part of Eric Morris. That's part of Cherrick Morris pushing the ball down the field. That's kind of what they do, and to exploit things from other teams. And Memphis kind of found themselves in a shootout, and you got to give them credit for being able to compete and just continue to fight, put up numbers, even after going down early. Not like it was a crazy, lead that they were going down, but North Texas was battling, man, was battling. So it was awesome. It was awesome, and the American. I'm glad we circled this one. We're like, we had to preview this one because it's legit American Conference standing implications. It's legit. There was a chance for North Texas to actually win this football game. I took Memphis, excuse me, to cover there, and you did too. And honestly, I think they play again. I don't know if I do that. I thought North Texas exposed some things at Memphis. It was those turnovers, right? A couple turnovers that were brutal. 3 for 6 on fourth down is also brutal. I love the aggressiveness, but still, any of those convert and they're potentially a different outcome in this football game. So yeah, that's kind of all I got to say.
Seriously, I mean, just once again, I mean, it's hard to predict with this North Texas team. Who if you were to bet on them all year, you actually would made a significant amount of money, except for the Texas Tech game because they have been covering football games. Just you still have some stuff you got to clean up, right? Defensively, you haven't looked good at all. You're garbage on the defensive side of the football. But getting Chandler Morris in there is proven to be a really good get for them. And they still have, weapons in there. Sheffield was unbelievable. What do you have? Like maybe 1 billion yards, rushing, receiving. He was really good. You still got a lot of talent there on the offensive side of the football that can alleviate the pressures of your defense. But like just Chandler Morris can't do everything. Right, he can't do everything. You've seen that time and time again. Eventually, if you put the ball in his hands, would they throw 61 times? Ball's going to get put on the ground. Ball's going to get put in the other team's hands a couple times. So that is what it is. They're a fast-paced team. They're going to throw the football a lot. They're going to trust their offense. Just if you had a defense, that's why Eric Morris was pretty successful his first year at Washington State. I guess was that his only year at Washington State as the OC? I don't know, but they had a really good defense there, and with Cam Ward, they had a good offense as well. You had a good quarterback. You did enough there. Sure, you moved the ball really fast, but your defense generated a lot of pressure on quarterbacks, forced turnovers, did a really nice job. North Texas doesn't have that, maybe down the road. You got a lot of really talented pieces in the state of Texas and North Texas.
Dallas Fort Worth area.
You're in Denton, literally Denton Geyer, Ben Ryan. I mean, you got really good talent all around you. Not a lot of those kids are going elsewhere, but it's not to say that you can't be successful, especially with the future outlook of the American Conference. Looking the way that it's looking, you got a chance to do some real damage in this conference and be, with East Carolina already firing their coach, Mike Houston, you got a shot to, I think, surprise some teams in future years. Just unfortunate that they fell a little bit short in this one.
I do want to say outlook for North Texas. Yes, this loss is brutal, but you still have a lot of goals in front of you, and the teams in front of you. Obviously, you won't have the tiebreaker with Memphis, but you get to play Tulane, you get to play Army, right? Those are big games. in the next couple of weeks that can decide the top of the American. And as for Memphis, you're looking at their schedule, and not that you're going to write off any games as wins, but Charlotte, UTSA, Rice, UAB, feeling pretty good about a lot of those games. And then it's Tulane at the end of the year on the road. Obviously, you do have that one loss, and Navy has your tiebreaker against you. So we'll see what happens there with the service academies. But I think the American can be a really fun finish. It was a fun finish last year. Remember that. SMU, I think Memphis was in there as well as UTSA. So it be very exciting. The American obviously has a chance not only have a playoff contender, right, as a G5 representative, but also just a really fun finish for that conference.
That's going to do it for our Week 8 recap. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in to the Redshirt Sophomore. Once again, if this is your first time here, look, we have a rule here. If you like the content, like the video. Right? It's that simple. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, no problem. Just give us a follow and a 5-star rating. And if you're on YouTube and you want to stick around for more stuff, we've got previews, we've got recaps. All right, just maybe hit that subscribe button. Maybe check us out. We recently had 500 subscribers, which we're super proud of. And we're happy to keep growing and keep this community alive. And we love interacting with you guys, even if you Iowa State fans. All right, I know you were giving me a lot of slack. Like, oh, we've played nothing but teams that can run the ball. All right, 350 yards on the ground. You just gave up last week. Whatever, it's fine. I love interacting with you guys, even if I'm always right. CD, anything for us on the way out?
Oh my goodness. I love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. No, it was awesome. Even though this week wasn't, crazy, whatever, but I really enjoyed watching football games. I hope you guys did as well. Like Matthew says, thank you guys so much for watching us. We have been growing. We've been grinding. It has been a lot of fun to be doing this. We're getting better and better as well. Love that you guys are with us for our growth and our ride through this journey of the Redshirt Sophomore. But yeah, continue to support us, continue to watch college football, continue to love college football, interact with us, and have a good time because goddamn, man, we are over halfway through the regular season, and damn, man, it's flying. Just enjoy it while we can.
Absolutely. We'll see y'all in the next one.